Okay, so let's put together a naked Z-Cam M4. Get everything you need in these packs. So sensor case comes all pre-assembled like this, so you know it all fits together. Bag of hardware and bits and pieces there. TPU parts, the struts, some stickers, and the top and bottom plates. We're going to start by fitting these standoffs to the bottom plate using 8mm button head bolts. So you obviously want it with the recessed holes on top. Okay, so now we've got those standoffs in place, we're going to take these longer steel standoffs here. Should be 5 of those longer ones, and then we're going to take 5 of these short M2 bolts. And we're going to fit those to these front 5 holes like so. So you're going to want to remove this cable that normally goes to the sensor, because we're going to replace that with a longer one. So go ahead and remove that. So the only cables we need is this one that goes to the sensor, this one that connects the I/O board to this one, and these two also go to the I/O board. So you have the CFast card at the front, and you just go ahead and drop this in on these standoffs. Like so. And go around and fit all these M2 lock nuts. And tighten them up. Now isn't a bad time to go ahead and fit your ribbon cable. That's going to go in this slot here. Now obviously it's not a full length, but what we're going to do is just insert it right at the far end here. So you want to make sure you're getting it on the very end. So make sure go past it, bring it in until it goes in at the very last pin. Then clamp that down. That's going to feed across there and attach to our control board. but it's easier to just fit that now while this is all nice and open. You can also take your JST extension cable and plug it into this JST port here. So pins at the bottom, like so. That's going to be fed up to your sensor with that cable there. This power cable can be tucked in down behind this standoff, because that's going to be fed across into the rear I/O board there, and these two are as well. So now with the main PCB unit fitted to the bottom plate, I'm going to take the top plate and we're going to go ahead and fit the mount here that the sensor goes into. That's just fitted in place with two countersunk bolts. Going to take our two strut mounts and fit those to the struts. So the press nut goes on the outside, or actually sorry, the inside of the strut. You're going to take one of these longer button head bolts, and you're just going to get that roughly in place. Take the other one, make sure you do it the other way round. So in this case it's going to go on like that. So you need this strut mount on the inside like so. And then going to go ahead and fit those to the top plate by inserting them into the side of the top plate there. Just going to fix the strut mounts to the top plate with the rear bolts just to hold them in place for now. And with the top plate sorted for this stage, you're going to put that to one side. Take the rear I/O board, USB-C and the SMA. Okay, it's Bloods from the future here. And after putting this together and testing the USB-C, I realised that I must have put this on wrong. It's annoying that there are actually two versions of this ribbon cable. I'm not sure if it's going to focus on that properly or not, but it actually says Eclipse FPC Type-C version 2. On a couple of the other ones I've done, they're actually version 1, and with those you have the pins going down. Pin side down on that end and pin side up on the USB-C end, but with this one it's pin side up on the board and pin side up on the USB-C. Now the good thing is that you're not going to break it or anything if you put this on the wrong way round. All that's going to happen is that when you plug your iPhone in and go onto the app to connect to the control, it's just going to come up saying that. It's not going to let you connect over USB-C. Even though your phone will make a noise and it will start charging your phone, it's where only the power lines are in the right position and the data lanes are messed up. Luckily that doesn't fry anything, so all you have to do is turn this over. When that goes up to the top, you still need this PCB to be on the left hand side so it slots into the TPU properly. So yeah, a little bit of a mistake there, but I'm dropping this in so you know what to do and you don't make the same mistake. Then refit this to there, pin side down, and then when it goes around to the front, you can see that the PCB is on the left hand side now. Then we can take this TPU part, feed the USB-C inside there, and put that over the top like so. And then the top plate will hold that in place. But before we fit all that, we're going to have to add our switch and power. So you can choose whether you want to use a switch or not. It's kind of optional. And so you can either have it where as soon as you connect power here, it will fire up, or if you run that power through this switch, then you can control it obviously using this switch. So I'm going to show you how to wire up the switch now. Okay, so how we're going to run the switch is power is obviously going to come in through this XT30 and it's going to go through the switch and onto these pads here. The easiest way to wire this up cleanly is with 3 wires. We're just going to solder 2 wires to this and 1 wire to the middle of this. So now that we've got these 2 bits wired up, you're going to take your XT30 and feed it into the TPU mount. You're going to take your switch and feed that through as well. It's just so that we can cut these wires to length now. So we're going to take this wire and connect it to this bottom pin on the switch. And you're going to want to make it about that sort of length. With both that pin and your wire tinned, you're going to want to pop a bit of heat shrink on there first and then solder those together. And then these 2 final wires, they're going to be the ones that solder to the 2 pads on this rear board. It's actually going to be easier to fit this TPU part to the board and solder the wires at the end. So take your USB. This is where that bit of slack comes in handy, because you're going to have to get it behind there and into the mount like so. you're going to want to feed that other switch wire off to the side like that. And when we push all that in place, we've now got the two wires coming right out, ready to be soldered to those two pads. So this one on the outside goes to the pad on the outside. So I'm just going to trim that wire down to about there. And then this one's going to have to loop around and go in there. Just take a little bit of the excess off there. So now we have our switch and our XT30 all wired in properly. Our USB-C all connected properly. And with the switch in place, you can go ahead and use the spring washer and nut to hold it in place. Now we're going to take the 4 shorter standoffs with threaders on top and attach them to this board. And we're going to be doing that. So the board's going to sit in the back like so. And we need these standoffs to go in with the threads down and the open, with the threaded pole. We're just going to attach them to the PCB like this. And then we're going to put bolts in through the top plate to hold that in place. So we're just going to go around and fit these M2 lock nuts to the standoffs. So you're going to want to route these two MIPI cables like so. The left one like that, and the right one like that. And the way to tell which way up these go in, pin side up is how you have to insert them, and they just slide into these connectors like so. Pin side up. And then they just slide in like so. And they're all labelled. If you want to double check, you can just about see underneath here it says HDMI, HDMI. So left one goes to the left, right one goes to the right. And then this JST connector just goes in the side there. So holes at the top. And then you can fit your SMA, the UFL connectors right on the bottom there, on this corner. So you just pop that on and feed that up through there like so. Then we can go ahead and put it over the standoffs. You're going to want to feed the sensor cable up through the little gap on the side and arrange all these cables so they're a bit nicer. Something like that, so that those two can just go up through the top plate. Got the rear I/O board hanging on the standoffs there, and obviously it's loose. And we've got our cables routed nicely, ready to go through the top plate. So take your top plate and feed those cables through. And then we're going to use the 4 remaining 6mm M2 socket bolts to hold this PCB to the top plate. So when you're doing this, just make sure that nothing's getting caught anywhere. You want to make sure that this is all going to be able to reach the top plate without catching on any of the other PCBs. So make sure this is going to actually be nice and aligned properly before you put all the bolts in. What this does is just going to pull everything up into place and secure all the USB-C, the switch and the UFL. Everything's all now nicely secured, and we can go around and fit the remaining 8mm button M3s. Now, it might have been, probably would have been easier to just feed this through before putting the top plate on, so yeah, I recommend you do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to be doing it like this. Once you get the ribbon cable out the other side, it's pretty straightforward. Open up the ribbon cable connector there. And that's just going to fit nicely around the sensor mount, and you're obviously going to need to use a bit of VHB tape to hold that in place so it isn't all wobbling around. This is going to give us access to the menu, record, stop and start, and the menu controls there on the right. Now with all those in place, now we're going to fit the sensor to the sensor case. Remove those 4 bolts and you'll be able to take the back plate off now. And you can see inside here we've got 3 mounting points. We have this foam pad frame here, that's the dust seal. So just like with a Blackmagic where we use shims to adjust the distance between the sensor and the lens, the Z-Cam actually uses these 3 springs which just go on these posts here, and then the sensor sits on top there, and as you tighten them up it reduces or increases the distance between the sensor and the lens. So go ahead and put those 3 springs on top there. Clean off clean off any of the gack that's still on there, and we're just going to drop the sensor onto those posts like so. And then we're going to take these 3 self-tapping screws and just go through down there and screw all the way down until it takes the tension. So just enough so that it's just holding it in place for now. So as soon as it starts pinching, you can release. So there, and you can see that you can still adjust this sensor slightly by moving the springs, and it creates a seal with that foam pad creates a seal around the sensor so no light can get in. So pop a lens cap on the front just to help protect the sensor. And then we're going to go ahead and attach these cables. So you're going to want to have the pins facing up like that. And we're just going to go and slide that into the bottom of the sensor, like so. Then we're going to take the JST and plug that in. And just run that down the side of the sensor, roughly coming out at the bottom. Now we can take these top and bottom parts and fit those. And I just like to have it sitting in place like that. So it's just loosely together. Let me zoom out a bit here, should be able to see a bit better. So I've fitted the parts to it, and you can see it's a bit loose, but it's together enough that we can get the lens on the front of it and adjust the sensor. So you can even go ahead and use the thumb screws. Just so it holds it in place a bit. And now we're ready to put a lens on it, connect HDMI, and what we're going to be doing is adjusting these 3 screws here, either by tightening them up or slacking them off, and that's adjusting the shim distance. So you just do a little quarter of a turn on each to keep it all level. You do the same amount of turn on each one every time until you bring it all into perfectly focus into infinity. And then we're going to drop the back plate on and do these bolts up. Okay, so I've got my camera set up here with a layer lens on board and my monitor plugged in, all ready for the first plug-in and for focusing the sensor. So she's working. So yeah, as you can see, very out of focus at the moment. And that's because we've only screwed the sensor in just slightly. So we're going to start by screwing it in a bit more. So you're going to have to adjust the angle so you can get in there. And then, just like I said earlier, do a quarter of a turn on each one. And check your focus again. You can see that it's still out of focus by quite a lot, so I'm going to do another turn. Okay, with another quarter turn, I'm getting it pretty close now. You can either turn on focus peaking on the Z-cam itself, or if your monitor has got focus peaking, you can use that. And you can see there that chimney just there, right in the middle. That's the furthest away point that I can focus on. That's what I use for focus in to infinity. So the camera's set to infinity, and as you adjust the aperture, you want to be able to keep that chimney focused even with the aperture really wide open. And you can see it's just slightly losing it as I widen it. You have to close the aperture quite a bit before it focuses, but it's almost perfect. So that, I'm going to say, is more like an 1/8 of a turn. So I'm just going to do an 1/8 of a turn on each of these screws. And now when I have the aperture wide open, it's still peaking on the chimney. So now that my focus is set, I'm going to go ahead and put the back, well, before putting the back plate on, you're going to want to put Loctite over all of these so that they can't come undone. They're done up pretty tight, and they're self-tapping nuts, self-tapping screws, so they shouldn't come undone. But go ahead and put some Loctite over these bolts, and then put the back plate on. Okay, so as you can see, I've fitted the back plate and ran that JST down the side of the sensor there, and it just pops out the back with the sensor cable, which you can just tuck in nicely. This is still loose, so I need to get a bit of VHB tape on that. So just a couple of bits of VHB tape should be enough. And now I can stick that down nice and neatly. There we go. So that's all secured in place. I've got the 4 bolts going through, holding the back plate all nicely in place. One of the last bits we're going to have to do is feed the bolts through the sensor mount into lock nuts on the other side. This can be a bit fiddly, but just persevere. You might want to use tweezers here to actually get this in nicely. So once you've got the nut in, you want to hold it with your finger on one side, and then use a 2.5mm driver just to do that up. So just repeat the same thing on the other side. So drop the nut in, feed this up from the bottom, hold the nut in place with your finger, and then do this up. And now the sensor's all fitted in place. The final 2 bolts are just these 2 longer ones that go through the front here, into the front standoffs through the strut mount. And there we have it. That's one complete naked Z-Cam M4. All that's left to do is put some battery straps through and put your alpha gels on and attach it to a frame, preferably a HaloRC Horus. And that is it. That is how you put together a naked Z-Cam. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing all your footage coming soon, and take care until the next one. Laters.